Yeah, I appreciate you.
Yeah, it's
This
good to be
is
here.
this means a lot. I know it was. Yeah, I just appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, it's good to be here, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
You know, you've been working hard. I've been watching it.
it's hard to stay consistent on this. It's hard to it's getting hard. I got next week agreed to come on.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I sent him a message a while ago, and
Yeah.
I got a message yesterday morning saying he'd come on and gave me his assistant's number, and
Amazing.
yeah, so
Amazing.
yeah,
It's in time, right? Like it's.
it's.
Are you recording already?
I've got it going,
Good,
but
good.
I have editing. Well, you
Yeah.
you,
No,
you
that's
said-
fine. I just want to know that we don't have to start anything. Yeah.
was-
Because this conversation should be on there.
Yeah,
as I'm concerned,
that's
yeah.
the thing. You know what? Maybe I'll just do a quick introduction here. Okay. Hello, welcome back to the Alternative Highs podcast, the #1 podcast in Southwestern Ontario. Feels kind of funny when I sit across from another podcaster. Just a quick PSA. I have a very high percentage of non-subscribers watching this. If you could be so kind as to hit that subscribe button, put a like on it, I'd really appreciate that. Now on with the show. Today's guest, super cool guy. I met him at the gym, as I've met quite a few of my guests, because that's where like-minded people hang out. This guy has a cool story. He is a big man in our community, and he was a big deal in his past. And I know you hate when I say it. It's cool, man. It's so
I had a great time.
It was,
You know.
and that's where I want to kind of start this journey.
Sure.
You're an ex-CFL football player.
Yeah.
You're 6 foot.
There was a time that I was 6'5". Those days are long gone now.
You're a big guy. When you run it, you have a presence. How you went to university?
Yeah.
Where did you go to university?
So I went to University of Windsor.
Okay.
I have a weird kind of story to the beginning of my football career. I was
Yeah.
actually almost a transplant kid. Like my parents just moved a lot. So
Yeah.
we moved, my dad was a teacher, my mom was a nurse, worked for the VON. And we moved out to Saskatchewan because that's where teaching jobs were in the 70s. In the 70s.
Yeah.
If we were in the 70s right now, we'd be talking about the 40s. So
Yeah.
just to give you an idea, right? Long time ago. And so we moved to Prince Albert, and then we moved around quite a bit, and I ended up in a small town in Saskatchewan called South Saskatchewan. And I was kind of a trouble kid, you know. I had a brother who passed from leukemia. He died. He was 9 when I was 15. I had 2 other brothers that survived, are still alive. One was younger than Patrick, and one was older than me. So I was kind of we were all just kind of trying to deal with that.
Yeah.
And I started getting angry. So I started kind of rebelling from not only rebelling from God, which I mean that's a big part of my story, but really started rebelling from like school, from any authority whatsoever. I became it wasn't like I was a stand up and F you guy.
Mm-hmm.
I had an agenda, and my agenda included exactly what I wanted it to include, and I ignored everybody else, you know. And it went like that for a while, you know.
How long can something like that last for?
Well, if it wasn't for my dad, it would have lasted a lot longer and probably been the end of me.
I was going to say, because
You know, he saved me from myself to some degree early on. He just he gave me football.
I was going to say, when did football come into the picture for you?
Yeah, my dad found out, well, so we're living in a small town. He's the principal of the high school, and I'm in grade 9 going into grade 10, and I'm just we're just booze cruising and smoking dope and fighting and causing problems and chasing girls and you know, like some of that stuff, whatever. But you know, when your 14-year-old son's doing it, it's never good.
Like,
Right.
especially the teacher of the school.
Well, he's a principal.
I was going to
So-
say the one that has to discipline you on both sides of the.
I was good at not getting in trouble at school, but man, once I was outside, I had friends, it just, anyway, so he got a hold of me, and I'd come home late one night, and he got a hold of me and started ripping into me pretty good. And he said, you can't do this to me anymore. And I'm like blowing him off. I'm like, dude, I'm not doing anything to you.
Yeah.
And he says, well, you're killing another one of my kids. And I went, oh.
Yeah. Oh, that's strong.
Yeah.
That'll cut
So
you.
he gave me football. He said, what do you want to do to get out of this hole you dug? I dug a nice hole for myself. He says, what do you want to do to dig yourself out of this hole? And I have no idea. He says, well, find something that works, that's good for you, that is, that makes you more powerful, not weaker, and it helps people around you, and it makes people feel good, and it makes you, so you're building something. Find something, anything you want to do. From this small town south of Saskatchewan, an hour away from the city, in the middle of nowhere, winds blowing through at 50,000 kilometers an hour, he's saying, find something, and I promise you, I'll help you do it. No matter what, I'll help you, and I'll get you whatever you need. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? You're 15, right?
Yeah.
Find something, And I found this Sports Illustrated magazine. There's a guy on the cover from Canada. His name was Tony Mandridge, and Tony was an NCAA guy, and he played for Michigan, and he was 6'6", and he was 315 pounds. And I read his stats, and I just saw a guy that was just, life was not kicking this guy around, and I felt like life was kicking me around.
Yeah.
Right. We watched the Rough Riders here and there, but I wasn't a fan. I didn't care about anything. Right.
No kidding.
Just partied. I saw this guy, and I just said, well, life doesn't kick this guy around. I want to be this guy. So I brought my dad the magazine, and I'm like, Dad, I found something that I can do where I can build myself up instead of tearing myself down.
Yeah.
And so he's looking, and he says, he's reading. He's like, no, this guy eats 5,000 calories a day. Still a teacher's salary, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, he looks at me, he says, you want to be 315 pounds? And I said, yeah. And he's like, well, what is wrong with you, man?
You gave me options.
Like you told me I could find something. I want to play football. And he took the car to the garage, and he built a gym in the garage. He put a speed bag in there, a punching bag, put a bench press in there, put a stereo system in there, put rubber flooring in there, I don't remember everything, but it was a lot of stuff. I still have the speed bag in my garage now.
That's amazing.
In my new garage. Right?
Yeah.
And I still use it because it was one of the first things he ever gave me. But, so then he took his car out, and it's like minus 600 in Saudi, right?
Yeah.
It's cold here.
Yeah.
It's cold there, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. And then he bought a car for my brother and made us both drive into the city because there's no team in Saudi. So then we had to drive into Leopoldus High School, and I found football, and I was good. Like, I was just good at hitting people.
Yeah.
Right? It was. They made a D lineman. They're like, hit the guy with the ball. I'm like, perfect. This is great.
You didn't start your football career until
grade 10.
Grade 10.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Because you went and played university. You played ball there.
Yep.
Did you do your whole stretch of school before going off into pro?
I didn't. So listen, man, it's a windy road.
Yo, I can't even imagine. I didn't make it.
Well, it's funny because I was lucky enough to have football, and I was lucky enough to have my father who gave me the support to play it. And we had our own problems, right? The parents were divorced, and there's all sorts of different things going on. But he gave me that, and he helped me, figure out that I was good at that, and that gave me so many other things. But it was like I was still screwing up, Even though I had football, I was still, dropping out of high school. Yeah. I dropped out of high school, had to go back to my buddy Craig Poole, one of my dearest friends in the world, saved my butt. He comes and found me bouncing at a bar, and he's brought coaches in from the University of Windsor team, and he's like, what are you doing? I was like 225 pounds, smoking darts at the front door, getting in fights at Main Street in Chatham. Yeah. Right? And he's like, you're just wasting, you have so much potential. I had no idea what my potential was, right? So he saved me, right? And so all these people that kept on stepping in, and I mean, you realize eventually it's God. Yeah. You do, right? Yeah. Because that's how he works. Yeah. And so then I ended up dropping out of high school, going back, getting my OACs at Assumption Collegiate in Windsor, and getting the help of my Aunt Kate. God rest her. She's not God rest her. She's alive and wonderful, but just I mean, just a blessing. Helped
Yeah.
me figure out what to do at school. Went to Laurentian for a semester. Transferred to Windsor so I could play because I couldn't get into Windsor because I couldn't get my grades up that much because I was still screwing up. Right?
Okay.
Like I'm just on this road of just trying to sabotage myself, you know. And then as soon as I got to university, the head coach saw me at camp and he said, "You should go pro. Like you need to concentrate on going pro." Well, so to me that meant make football the only thing
Yeah.
because that's who I am,
Yeah.
right? Grades be damned,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Well,
Mistake.
you're told by a head coach, it's like that's credibility to you to push forward.
Yeah.
No?
Could have taken some time, maybe gone to a guidance guy and said, what classes should I be taking? Right.
Fair
so
enough.
I missed, granted, I was in sociology. I was there for football, but I was really just trying to kick the can down the road till I figured out what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
You know, so I played for 3 years at Windsor. I met some amazing people in the University of Windsor at the ball. And we're still buddies now, Lancers,
Yeah.
you know, go Lancers.
Yeah.
Just awesome group of guys. They taught me so much about, you know, just about not only the game, but they taught me just so much about just having friends. You know? And they put up with me disappearing for 15 years, 20 years, coming back, and it's still very welcoming. And, you know, like it's just really neat to know the guys that you know, right?
I appreciate sport.
Yeah.
Because it can be almost any sport, and you'll have that relationship for after 15, 20 years, poke your head up, and it's just like you never skipped a beat.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's one of the blessings that is sport, I believe, because I haven't done anything in a few years.
You've been doing a lot, Dustin. I know you've been doing a lot, man.
I just today had a meeting with a guy that I played junior with 20 years. We hadn't seen each other. Saw me out at supper, sent me a message, and we got together for coffee. That's one of the cool things about sport. I don't want to detour off of your story. I wanted to
No, but that
say
sport's
what
more
sport.
important.
That's the jam of the sport.
Yeah, and that's to me. So I played 13 years pro. I played 3 years in college, and I was a mess. Like I was a mess even. Like I got real egomaniacal during my football career. Football was God, and I don't say that lightly because I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
You know, but I made it the only thing.
Yeah.
And it messed me up because my ego just grew and grew and grew. And I was playing in the CFL. It's not like I'm making millions, but people are telling you you're good, right? And you got a lot of friends and things are easy and you don't realize that. Like if you're playing a professional sport and you're complaining about your life, you got to get a life.
Yeah.
It's you know, it was a good time, right?
I was going to say, without being you, and everybody always has the exact same thing. Well, if you're doing what you love and you get paid for it,
Yeah.
isn't that the dream?
Yeah.
But people don't understand the demons that come with the dream. Sometimes that we bring along for the ride.
Yeah.
I mean,
Agreed.
I literally brought the demons to every single ride. I can understand it. I know for you, we've talked about it before. Like it was it tough through the playing professional ball and trying to stay. Well, you said ego, but grounded from all the outside demons, whether it be the bar scene or it be the.
It's a good question. Number one, my hammy's locking up.
I had the hip
This morning. So at first, it was so much about keeping my job. When I was in Saskatchewan, we weren't a great team. You know, made it to the Grey Cup first year, lost against Doug Flutie in 1997. Okay. You know, in Edmonton, just an awful game. But we made it, and we were not a great team. So like I was a rookie and I was starting. So this is amazing. But you get to a point where it's like I've got to keep my job, and so I started within the next 3 years making the mistakes I need to make to figure out, okay, well, this is what I need to do to keep my job. And then that was the focus. But, you know, there was always a party. There was always a bar after the game. There was always someone that wanted to talk to you. There was always, and so you just, you know, while I was there, especially, it was very, very much about football, and it was about the guys. which again, like I want to talk about a group of offensive linemen. Like, I mean, these guys are all fantastic guys, still around today. One's the GM in Saskatchewan.
Okay.
You know what I mean? There's like Andrew Green was one of the best players I ever saw. Like he was an offensive lineman that was it was natural to him, right? Just, I mean, he just walked. It was like, it pissed me off because it walked on the field like he wasn't even trying.
Okay.
You know, so casual, Jamaican Canadian dude. He's so casual. Right?
Yeah.
And he's just, and I'm just like, dude, like, that was one of the, if I had your potential, right? Meanwhile, I'm doing the same thing, you know, maybe 10%. In my eyes, 10% more effort. I didn't know what he was doing at the gym, right? Like maybe he's working harder than I was. I don't know. Now looking back, it's like, what was he doing, right? Who knows?
What's it like conversating with do you guys like call up one of the old chums from the Rough Riders days and just have like a old conversation, or how does it? What's that go on now? Like when with your old buddies, can you carry on that relationship? Is it something that is it the same brotherhood as the university boys?
So, another great question. It's interesting because it's like, I feel like the one, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit later on too, but I feel like the one kind of crime or sin committed against professional athletes, especially young guys, and into their prime, is not taking a lead and having programs in different areas of the world that stem outside of football. Like if you're a football player in Canada, you can be a football coach. I'll tell you, after 13 years of playing football in Canada, I didn't want to be unstable and be a football coach because I knew I'd be moving all over the country. Right? At that time, I was married. I'm married again, but at that time, I knew that I didn't want to be, and frankly, that wouldn't have gone over. Right?
Yep.
That wasn't. So there's no coaching. Although I love the idea of it now, looking back, it's like, oh, that was an avenue I probably could have taken. Right? So you say, okay, well, what are you going to do? So my career path started. Okay, well, I got into professional speaking because of football. And that's really my career. I mean, you called me a podcaster. I do have podcasts that I'm working on. I've got 2 Christian podcasts that are going to be coming out this year. I'm really excited about those.
That's awesome.
I still do the Bridge podcast where I'm interviewing guys in the field. I've spent a lot of time over the last couple of months really saying, okay, tearing down what I'm doing and planning all that. So that's part of it. But when I get called for a speech, I go to the speech.
That's where I kind of wanted
career.
That's where I wanted to go to, because
that's my career.
That's cool.
But to answer your question, once you get out, it's interesting because you go trade from team to team, or maybe you don't. I feel like there's a lax period, or for me anyway, there was a period where I didn't want to see anybody because I hadn't got my life figured out. You know, and I didn't know that what that meant was I had to find the Lord. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I just never felt at home after football. Like, so I was speaking for a career. I was writing books.
Did you do that right after your football career? You went right into the public speaking?
Yeah, I retired in 2008, started the business that I'm currently, a type of business just like I'm currently running. And then in 2010 had to return to ball when I was 38 years old because I just wasn't making any money. So last ditch effort to try to keep my speaking career going.
You went back after?
I went back. I played in Calgary for 1 year.
No shit.
Oh, I got my head knocked off. I was decent.
I never asked this question before. I didn't know you made the return, come out of retirement.
I did the comeback.
The victory lap.
Yeah, victory lap. Yeah.
How was that at 38? You're not that old. What are you?
52.
Like, you still look like you're 10 years younger than me.
Well,
I'm 41.
I'll take that compliment all day long.
I would have thought that this was just like a few years ago. If I was guessing.
No, it's like 2010, right? But idiotic, honestly. Like, if I look back, I called my head coach in Edmonton, and I was like when I left, and it was Danny Machocha, and he was a guy that I won 2 Grey Cups with.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, dude, I want to come back for 1 more year. But understand, I'd had multiple concussions. I'd had a ruptured tricep that took me out for most of a year. I'd had a broken leg that took me out for most of the year. My first bunch of games, like my first 7 or 8 years, I was really consistent. And then after my kids were born, there was a shift, and my body wasn't, I just couldn't stay on the field like I used to be able to.
Yeah.
And that you need, as an offensive lineman, you got to check that box for.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, I'll give you 50 grand to come back for 18 games. I'm like, 50 grand, like I owe 50 grand.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm in trouble here. I need money, right?
Yeah.
So I called his greatest competitor, John Huffnagel. Next call I made was Calgary. So Edmonton, Calgary have a huge rivalry, and he knew me, you know, knew my nickname, called me Commie.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. He says, what do you want? I mean, I've never talked to this guy on the phone, right?
Yeah.
And I said, I want to come back and play one more year of football. He said, aren't you old? I'm like, yeah, I'm old. And he says, well, can you coach and play? Will you lead? He said, I don't need a guy riding. I need a guy that's going to lead the troops. We just lost an old guy. They'd lost a guy named Jay McNeil, who was a step up, amazing guard for 15 years or something, right? Like just this talented guy. And I was old and I was pretty good in my day, right? Like I was all right. So I was like, yeah, I can do that job. I can help lead. So I went in with that mentality, and I'd been writing and talking and leading and doing speeches and writing books on leadership since I left. So for me, it was a great way to put practice in motion, right? So I was excited about it. But you just, 38 years old, as far as this guy is concerned, you shouldn't be playing football anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's a dumb thing to do. It's just really, like if that's the case, I could coach somewhere.
Yeah.
Hey, Danny, do you have a coaching job for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, pay me 70 and I'll coach instead of 50 to go and get my head knocked off.
No
right?
kidding.
But you have to ask.
Yeah. And it's hard to ask.
And it's hard to ask.
Yeah, why is it so hard to ask? Is it
pride?
Pride and ego?
Pride, I think. Don't you?
Oh, 100%. I'm the same. I have a hard time.
It's like the first sin.
Yeah.
Like literally the first sin ever committed was pride.
Yeah.
And that's probably, it stops us from doing a lot of good things, right?
It's wild.
Yeah.
Man, this is just... So, you do your last year. You do your final run through with the boys. You lead.
I get my head knocked in week 2, have a concussion. My contract is set up because they're businesses, right?
Yeah.
So they set it up so that, okay, I'll pay you $100,000, but every game that you miss, you miss half your paycheck. You get paid weekly. You get paid game one. Every game you get a paycheck, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So if I'm making 10 grand a game, and that's so, and I wasn't, but let's say you're making 10 grand a game, it adds up to $180,000, right?
Yeah.
So, but he based it on $100,000. So if I miss half my games, I make what Danny would have paid me just to be on the team.
Yeah.
And I could have sat the pine.
Yeah.
Right. So I get my head knocked off in week 2, and I don't tell anybody. And I've got we used to call them dingers. I got my bell rung, right? So, but I'd had concussions before, and I knew, number one, if you report them, you get sat.
Yeah.
And I couldn't afford to get sat.
No kidding.
The baby needs a new pair of shoes, man. Like it's not, so it's go time. So I was like, okay, well, and mistake. Looking back, if I was talking to myself when I was 38, I'd be slapping myself in the head again. Get your head straight, right?
What we know now,
right? Oh, and what we know about concussions now.
Yeah,
dude. So I played for 10 weeks like that, and didn't miss a practice. Didn't take a day off.
God, you're a glutton for punishment.
Oh, just loved it. Loved punishment. And then in week 14, I ran up against a kid in BC, and there was no film on him. I don't remember who he was because I stopped watching for years after I retired. But he's a beast, 6'8". He's a big D lineman, and he caught me when I wasn't looking. They ran a twist, so he got me in the side of the head. And I dropped like a sack of potatoes, and I come back to the bench, and my players are looking at me, and I'm like, "You all right?" "Yeah." So I finished the game, and then my training guy, my trainer named Pat Clayton,
yeah.
Amazing guy. Just really loved the players. Everybody's got people that complain about him, but I didn't talk to Pat because I knew he knew about me.
Yeah.
And then he saw me and he said, "You come see me in my office for a second." So I go into his office. He says, "You stand on one foot." I stand on a foot, and I basically fall over into the bench, into the table, and he just looked at me and said, "You're retired." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you," because I didn't know how to quit.
Wild,
right?
Yeah.
That's how he saved me. I honestly I've given introductions for him at speeches that he's done since then. I brought him in when I was working out west. Brought him in for a talk to our group, and I introduced him as the guy that saved my life.
That's because
I would have just kept playing.
And like, not everybody will see it that way, though. They're always like, person's against me, and you wanted that.
I didn't know I wanted it until he said it. He
But
took away the option of me not risking my life for my mortgage.
yeah, wild.
Right?
And like, I felt relieved at the end of that.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
So, okay, you do a very specific talk.
I used to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to go into it, but where is it been branching to now?
So, when I was concussed in Calgary, going through a divorce of my own, by the way, because of football, partially, probably because of some mistakes I made. You know, probably everybody had problems, right? But I took my NCSO, which is your National Construction Safety Advisor certificate. I did that in a friend of my father's basement. And as I was going through the concussion, my dad used to have these two friends, amazing people, John and Tia Scholten, who were psychiatrists in their life, and they were close to retirement or retired, semi-retired. I can't remember exactly, but Tia really took care of me and helped me deal with my concussion and my divorce. But while I was doing that, I was going to school, getting my NCSO. So within 6 months, I had my cert to be actually be able to go out into the field. Okay. Then I used my connections and I got a job at Shell. And I, as a safety advisor and trainer and adult educator, I ended up just going right into there for my speaking. And my dad was also in construction, based. He was a teacher, but he had like all sorts of businesses. So I knew what was going on. Yeah. But, they brought me in. I had a great time. Spent 6 years with them, and got my teeth in safety. And so that's where my safety business started. Yeah. Or my speaking business.
So, right? and that you've literally been all over Canada with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been very lucky. I'm starting to get gigs in like Mississippi now. And
oh, that's cool. So we're broadening into North America now.
Yeah, with the safety thing especially.
What drew you to go into the safety?
My life has been an interesting life of happenstance. So I had my mother married a fantastic man, and they're still both with us. And his name's John Smythe, and he had a son named Augie, and Augie died working for a hydro company in Ontario. He was up in the bucket, and he died, and it was like a worm in my head, like as to how he died. Number one, my sin with Augie was not ever being there when I should have been there to see him. Okay. Right? He wasn't somebody that, like, we were all adults, but he was a great guy. Yeah. Like, he's just a great guy. And so there's some respect paid there, and that's one of the stories I can tell, and I get into the details of that story for the crews I talk to, and it's really about accountability and intervention when I'm talking safety. Accountability throughout, but intervention is a big safety topic. People have to be able to step up and say, you're putting yourself in danger's way. I need you to stop, like, for you, for me. Like, no one wants to see anybody die. Yeah, no. Right. But, there was, I'm not getting into details about how that happened. It's not like, they had their interviews and all of their investigations. But he was 41. Yeah. And that was brother number 2. Right? Yeah. So it was like, oh, well, that hurts. Yeah, shit. And then I was married to a woman, my first wife. I'm currently married to my second and final wife. She's a very lucky woman. Yeah, I'm a lucky man. She's great. She's given me a home and a family and an amazing stepdaughter. And I'm a very lucky man. But my first wife's dad was severely injured in the mine up north when he moved to Alberta after retiring from being a miner at my age right now, at 52, and went back to mining so that his wife could be close to us while we raised our daughter, who was very sick. Okay. And he ended up getting hit in the head with a piece of rock, and it changed the trajectory of his entire life. Yeah. It just changed. So another head injury. Yeah. If you can imagine, right? So it's like, there's a lot of stories that I can tell from a very personal level about safety. Yeah. Which I've been given that gift, if you will, to honor these men. Yeah. And I don't talk about my ex-father-in-law as much as I used to, because I've streamlined a bit, and I you know, I respect him though, and I honor him for a long time, and I still do.
It's
But
admirable. It's a career that, that's what we do, is we use our stories to help others on their journey of life and whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
And now, like, we met. I did your podcast about 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
And you're also, I won't say branch, but now it's gone into your Christianity. You hosted Stand Up Men.
I was lucky enough to be a speaker at a conference locally that was held at my church, but it was multi-church and any dude in town, right? Yeah. So if you want to know Jesus, if you want to just get together with a bunch of guys and learn some new things, everybody was welcome. It was neat. There's about 100, 130 people there.
I followed. I ended up set. I was going to go to it. This is where I wanted to go with you. How did you come to this?
Oh wow!
Because
I love this.
I get to know you on a different level, so I know your religion wasn't always Christian, correct?
I was raised Catholic.
Yep.
So as a Catholic, I never. I want to be very careful. I have a lot.
And I don't want to set you up for anything.
No, you're not going to, and I've got to be able to field this question, to be honest with you, because it's an important question. Being raised Catholic, I didn't find a connection to know Jesus in that church. I've had conversation. I have an uncle who's a priest, who's an amazing, fantastic guy, and we had a great conversation about this a few weeks ago. And so Catholics know Christ. The Catholic Church knows Jesus. I'm not saying they don't. Mm-hmm. For me, there was no personal connection, and I'm a personal guy.
Yep.
So I was trying to figure out what was going on with this whole world, and honestly, I just kept on making mistakes. Kept on, like, stupid mistakes, like bringing women around my kids and breaking up with them after my divorce. Mm-hmm. Obviously, after my divorce, right? Yeah. Not before, clearly, but and I hurt them tremendously, and I probably emotionally mistreated some women along the way in the same capacity, and brought people that should never been into my life.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand. There's this myth that I find that people sell you and they give you, and my good friends who are also church-going folks, and you just keep on breaking up with people until you find the one that you stay with, right? Mm-hmm. And so you end up in this domino serial relationship thing, and it gets a little old, man. Like, it just turns into this, and you keep on bringing. It's like Jordan Peterson says, you want to have a relationship with someone, and you want to have the longest relationship you can, because it's like a rope of time. And if you have a relationship of like 30 years with somebody, that's 30 years that you not only know them, but you share a story with them that intertwines every other relationship in your life. And so every memory you have rolls into that story and that rope. Mm-hmm. So if you keep on going from woman to woman to woman, or man to man to man, you keep on severing those ties. You want a good illustration of it. How long is your history of photo albums? Right? Like, like if I got photo albums at home, I got photos at home that I can't put in photo albums. I could, but there's a girl in the photo album I don't want my kids to ever see. I don't want to have those conversations anymore, because I want to honor my wife. And I am true, and I love my wife. And she's been one of the biggest blessings the Lord's given me. Because just before I was even saved, she was an amazing woman. We've known each other for 30 years. So we have that rope to some degree. Right?
Yeah.
But her son's living in BC, and I held him when he was a baby. He's 30 years old. Right? So it's like, it's not, there is some of that, right?
Yep.
But if you don't learn the important lessons in life and say, okay, well, when I marry somebody, it's not, I hope this works. It's, this is one of my favorite old pastors says, you know how you married the right woman? You married her.
Yeah.
Because they're all going to teach you lessons, man.
Yeah.
Every one of them's got something to teach you. You're not going to like them.
You're not wrong. That's amazing.
So I can't remember what question you asked. I'm just talking at this point. Sorry, man.
I don't even care. That's the whole point of a podcast. We could just talk about anything.
Yeah.
I don't even remember.
Yeah. Oh, Path to Christianity.
Oh, right.
Yeah, no, because this is a question I like talking about. So I was raised Catholic, but I didn't know God. I didn't know him on a personal level. And then it was actually, weirdly enough, it was Jordan Peterson. I was working in a business, and this young guy says, you should read this book, 12 Rules to Life. Mm-hmm. It's, the title is 12 Rules to Life, An Antidote to Chaos. And it's Jordan Peterson's biggest book, biggest seller.
Yep.
And this is 10 years ago or whatever, like a bunch of years ago. I don't know exactly how many. So I read it, and I'm like, oh. And it's all Christian values. But Jordan Peterson's not necessarily a Christian. But he lives with Christian rules.
Okay.
Right? So you're maybe an intellectual Christian.
Okay.
Right? And well, what's the difference if you're an intellectual Christian or there's intellectual Christians, and then there's Jesus loving Christians.
Yep.
And I'm on the ladder, and it's a wonderful, weird bunch of people. Like you just go, your life is a lot different, right?
Yeah.
So, but the intellectual side caught me, and so I started reading this book, and I was divorced, and I was, in the domino of different things that were going on in my life, and I was trying to maintain my speaking career, which has always helped me keep things together. But a lot of years when I didn't know what I was doing, I had to have other jobs. So I would get, I'd take jobs in safety for the first 6. That's till I got stable, and then, but there was always other work, right? So I was, couldn't have a stable enough life to kind of build it. So whatever. So I'm doing that. And I'm living in an apartment in Halifax, and I'm trying to keep, you're paying, for 2 houses, and, like at the end of the day, you got checks coming out everywhere, and you got to keep them up, and the courts are involved, and men aren't treated very fairly as far as I'm concerned. But a lot of it, morally, I know I'm responsible. So it's like, okay, you're doing it, right? You keep on paying, and you keep on trying to do all the right things. But I was like, everything was falling around everywhere. I couldn't keep it all together, and I couldn't, and I was drinking. Like I'll have a glass of champagne at the holidays with my family. I might even have a beer. Yep. But it's like once in a few months now, right? It took me a long time to even allow myself to do that, because it's, for a long time, alcohol was my God. Yeah. Went from football to money, which if you chase it long enough, it always leaves you. Yeah. Right. Yep. To alcohol. Yeah. And it was like, so I was like, I was a drunk whenever I had a chance. Yeah. So if I'm working out west, I'd drop the kids off on Sundays. I'd go home, I'd have a bottle in my hand by the time I got to my apartment. I'd sit there by myself, and I'd call my relatives, and I'd just drink a bottle. And then the next day I'd have to go back to camp, and then I'd be dry for 2 weeks. Yeah. Because I was at camp, and camps were dry. You weren't allowed to do anything. Right? Yeah. Which is probably why I'm alive. Yeah. If you look back at the gifts you're given, right? So there I am. I'm lost, and I read this book, and the book, one of the first rules is clean your room. And it's like, take care of your own life before you complain about anybody else's, Yeah. So that's a real, that's a very low brow explanation for he's a smart guy, right? So
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I say, okay, well, I got to clean my room. And then my dad sends me a book, and the book is, it's called The Return of the Prodigal Son. And it's a book about a painting about a parable in the Bible. So I won't get into the details of the parable, because I'll get ulterior. I don't feel like it right this second. Maybe in a few minutes. I appreciate that. So the prodigal son is a son who left and spent his father's fortune. Right? So he took his father's fortune, he left, and then when he was broke, he came home.
Take your time.
Yeah, dude. I came over here saying I'm going to be 100% honest, and that's the only reason I can do this.
I appreciate you.
I love my old man.
Yeah.
He passed 3 years ago, so we miss him. But anyway, so he gave me this book, and I read the book, and I couldn't put it down. And the book the parable is really about the brother of the son, of the prodigal son. But of course, every man has a piece in that story. If you've been a father, you've felt like your son has walked away from you. Mm-hmm. If you've been a son, you've betrayed your father and paid the price. If you've had a brother that's betrayed your brother and paid the price, you felt that anger. right? So there's those three, all of that is in there. And I mean, I'm not going to get into dissecting the whole thing, but it's a powerful passage, and it always smashes me right in the face, as you can see. And I read it, and I'm like, okay. And he just said, come home, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'm not coming home. I've got 3 kids in Halifax. I've got to see them every other weekend. It's the one thing I know I've got to do. Mm-hmm. It's the one thing that kept me breathing, you know? Because it's like without them, like they were the greatest challenge in my life because of the divorce, but they were the only thing that mattered.
I get you.
Right. But you can never do enough. And I was always screwing up, and I was always, you know, if you've been a dad in a divorce or even just a dad in a house, you can't be good enough to your kids. You can't do it right enough, you know? So I'm reading this book and I'm like, well, this book is showing me how to do it right. And then my old man calls. He's like, you should come home. And then my brother calls, and he's been working on getting me a job, right? Because he wants me to come home too. Because they know I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? So I come home. And I come home, and I build a relationship with my father again after being gone for 25 years. I get supper with him every week, and that was amazing. And I take a job that gets me through COVID, you know, sales role that gets me through COVID. I took it just a little bit before, but luckily had it, and it paid the bills. So because there's no speaking during COVID, right?
Yeah.
Like I was still a speaker, and I was actually making good money before COVID. So it was kind of like, you know, the job allowed me the freedom to come home, and it allowed me the freedom to survive while COVID was going on and screwing everybody's life up. Right?
Yeah.
So that was great, and then I just, after reading the book, and I started realizing, well, if I'm going to start following the rules, I better start reading the Bible. So I started reading the Bible, and I'm like, oh, this is really, you know, wild. And I'm listening to pastors, and I was doing these hard 75 things. I'm, you know, quitting booze for time. So I'm getting my life together, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay, I'm going to walk every day, and I'm going to listen to gospel. So I'd listen to preachers as I was walking every day, and I started feeling like, oh, geez, you know. And then this preacher says, you got to find a church. And I'm looking for a church, and I can't, you know, I just can't get the connection of the Catholic Church. And honestly, it's not against the Catholic Church.
Nope.
For me, it was just, I couldn't eat that bread.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe selfishly because I was divorced, I would have needed an annulment to have a relationship with a woman, right? I knew I wanted to maybe it's just a laziness thing to God. You know, I don't honestly, you just don't know how much you lie to yourself, right?
Yeah.
But I know I walk into a church, and it's not even the church that I go to every week. I walk into this church, another church. It's a very fiery, on fire for the Lord church, and they do what they call an altar call. And I just said, you know, because I hadn't accepted, I had said I know there's a God. I understood that God was God. I understood that God had to create the universe because, you know, it's like they say, right? You either believe that God created the universe or it just happened. Because even atheists, there's the Big Bang Theory, right? They have to have faith in that miracle, right? So it's like, well, okay, so there's a God.
Yep.
And then so all the research I'm doing, and I start listening to pastors. Well, if there's a God and he gave me a book, it's kind of like a letter. Well, it's really 66 books, but he gave me this letter, and every time you read the letter, it brings you closer to him. Yeah. Like, well, okay, well, that's cool. Because now I can actually, your dad alive? Yeah. If he ever writes you a letter, you put that away and keep it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So you got the book, and the book is it's knowing God. And so I start doing that, and then I go to this church, and I'm just like, okay, well, Jesus, if you're there, which I didn't know if he was. I knew he was. My heart was telling me, talk to him, right? Yeah. But I didn't. If you're there, get me up to the altar. I put my head down. Somebody grabbed my hand.
Walked you.
I was at the back of the church. Somebody grabbed my hand and walked me up to the altar, and I just confessed. I confessed that he was real in that moment, and my life has been. It's been. There is no way I could explain to the guy that I was before who I am now, because that guy's dead, and something else came out of that, and it's all about the Lord, and I can't. It's really.
I can really appreciate it about you because you are super honest and you talk about it. It's honestly why I've been won't say that I was, okay, I will say, prior to my accident, I might have been a bit of an atheist. I don't know if I was just an asshole. I didn't.
Been there.
A lot of me and you are very relatable.
Yeah.
Everything you were talking about, minus the professional, I was running around doing it. And when I got into my accident, you know, they came in, they told me, you're not going to walk again. And as you can imagine, that's pretty crushing.
Can't imagine.
And my dad had just found Jesus. He
Really?
did not go to church one day in my life. And then in his late 40s, he might even be in his 50s. It was his 50s. He just getting ready to turn 64 here next week. He found Jesus. You know, we all went to his baptism, and we call this guy Holy the Goalie. He's
Called your dad or another guy?
the priest that played hockey, and
Okay.
I light him up. I am a shit talker from way back. I can do the best, and this guy always respected me, and he liked me. He didn't care what problem I was. And when I got into my accident, as a father, you can understand this. You want to do anything you can for your kid. And my dad, you know, I went on his phone and canceled a date, and he felt so bad that I was alone. He called this girl. I didn't even know who the girl was. I just canceled a date. Meanwhile, she's sitting at my bedside being all sweet because my dad asked her to come sit with me. Dads will do wild things for their kids.
Yeah, they will.
My dad asked me, he said, do you mind if Holy Goalie comes and sits with you for a bit? I said, as you can imagine, I probably gave him some shit. And
Yeah, you're mad. You got to be mad.
I'm not going to pretend like I was polite about anything. Whatever. You know, I wish I was better, but it was a shithead. And very soon afterwards, he came in. And, you know, we joked around a little bit, and we had our conversations, and he just said, Dustin, do you think it's okay if I pray? Should you do your thing, bud? And his hand goes on my leg, and you know, when you lose your legs, you're looking for a fire. Like they'll hit shit all over your body with little rubber hammers, and there was no fire. I had nothing. Nowhere on my lower extremities could we get any sort of body part to fire. He's saying his prayer, and no word of a lie, my big toe just goes, boing.
Yeah, God is good.
And I, in that moment, my life changed. I no longer was this dipshit atheist. I had no idea what I was, but I wasn't going to shit talk my dad's thoughts anymore. Like, I only did it to bug him.
Yeah.
That's literally just a dickhead.
That's what we do to our kids. That's what we do to our fathers.
And I spent every day in the chapel while I was in Chatham. And then when they moved me to London, I could not find that chapel for a while, but I spent every single day praying to walk again. There's videos of me very shortly after learning how to walk again.
What are the chances that you come back from the injury you had and walk again? What, like, if your doctors gave you stats, how many out of 100 come back?
Not many.
Yeah.
I don't know the numbers. I'd be lying if I said it, but it's not very high. Like, I've been told I'm a bit of a freak.
Yeah. Well, so this is the interesting thing, right? Is that I have a dear friend who recovered from addiction. And I told another friend of mine that it was a miracle. Mm-hmm. And he said, that's not a miracle. That's just somebody recovering from addiction. And I'm like, is it?
Yeah. I'll have that
it?
conversation with you.
You know, is it? Like, is it really just someone There's no help. You're not doing it because, like, just, you know, and he's not an atheist, the guy saying that.
Yeah.
But people don't, like, God works all the time.
Yeah.
And God worked, I have no doubt that God worked in you. And I know that when we've had conversations, you've said, you know, you believe that there's a God, right? And now that was a year and a half ago when we started talking.
Yeah.
And I was new. Like, I'm like 2.5 years into being, you know, really reborn. And people get weird about that word, but it's what it is.
I
Right?
100% respect it.
But it was a lot harder for me to talk to you back then because I just couldn't even get around how emotional I am. Emotional now about God, about my family. I'm just an emotional guy. We joke about me not being emotional because it's so bad, right?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter. But like you prayed for your legs, and you got your legs, and you know there's a God where you didn't think there was a God, or you didn't want to think there was a God. Did you want to think? Did you not want to think there was a God, or did you not think there was a God?
I don't honestly know. It was. I think it was more or less just bugging my dad because so late in life he decided to do it, and I don't know if I hate to think that I'm that ignorant and that petty.
Oh, we all are.
But I have no idea. I cannot remember because at that time I was a drug addict and alcoholic, and you know, like, and it only got much worse after that accident. So it wasn't at the forefront. And I mean,
But
as you were saying,
when you're a child, when there are so many scoffers, right? You say the word Jesus, people are like, okay, you can do that if you want.
yeah,
Not me.
Yeah.
You know, try not to. Like, it's one of those things, right? Because it's like, if I look at the world right now, and I look at what happened with the Olympics last year, and I look at what happens on the news and what we value as a society. You know, we value the ability to mutilate and murder children. We value that. Like, you're a bad person if you don't value the ability to mutilate and murder children. Well, that's the same as the Old Testament. Like, it's been going on for 6,000 years. It's been going on since civilization started. We've had these things that have done, and it's all spitting in God's eye, right? Because he says we're supposed to worship him and no other. We're not supposed to have any other idols. We're not supposed to have any other gods, right? And it's like, well, what is a God? Well, God's what you make it.
Yeah.
You can make a God out of drugs, alcohol, your girlfriend, sex. You know, I mean, what does society teach us? It teaches us to make gods out of all these things.
Yeah, sexualized everything.
Everything, and everything is about your next amazing. You know, like everything is about your next high. Whether it's a trip, whether it's a joint, whether it's a bottle, whether it's you know, speeding in your car, everything is about. It's when you start making everything about him, then all of that other stuff becomes very small.
Lacking the values.
Yeah, but you don't like. It's the problem is I can't criticize a non-believer for being the same as I was, because the one thing that they have to do is they have to see God, right? Like, they have to know him, and until they do that, it's easy to do everything else. It's easier than thinking about it or worrying about it. It's easier to, you know, smoke a joint, bang a belly dancer. It's easier to do any of that stuff than it is to say, no, I mean, I'm wrong. He's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can appreciate it.
You know, always.
Yeah.
You know how you know. That's my other favorite one is if you find yourself arguing in the Bible. You know, you're looking at the Bible like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. As soon as you start saying, I don't believe that, you know one thing for sure. You're wrong.
Yeah.
it's
I can
the truth,
appreciate
right?
I can appreciate it.
So that's an amazing story. You never told me that story before.
I sometimes there's so many little dingers I got in my repertoire of I can forget, I'll come back to.
Do you pray now?
Yeah. I'm 6 years sober. I don't want to fall off that wagon.
Yeah.
I fight chronic pain on a daily, hourly moment. It's a full-time job.
Yeah.
And I have to ask for help, and you know, sometimes it comes in prayer form. Sometimes it comes from a friend, let me lean on them. And sometimes, as you can tell, it comes from a tattoo. It's, I try, you know, we both met each other through fitness. That's where my thing all comes from, is it's trying to stay in healthy minded so that my body can regulate. Maybe I think that's why I wanted to look at it and word it, but it's
Well, when you started Alternative Highs, because we've talked about Alternative Highs and about, you know, different things to fluff your feathers as opposed to drugs and alcohol, right?
Yep.
When you started it, you didn't start it. This is where I start wondering if everybody, you know, how many Christians don't know they're Christian yet, right?
Yeah.
You didn't. It's not like you started it because there was something magical in it for you. You've been working on this for years.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like it's a get rich quick scheme.
No.
Right. It's just not, right? There's a passion there.
Yeah.
Right? Because you know that evil is one of the evils that's hurting people. That addiction problem.
Yeah.
You know, and in Canada, as well as in the United States, but we're Canadian. In Canada, it's hurting people.
So
I mean,
in our local,
men are just off in themselves. Like, it's awful, right?
it's tough to watch. The numbers were just put out there. I won't put them out because I can't remember them, but they are extremely high and extremely sad. And you know, it's funny. I just had this. Nobody asked. I didn't ask to become an addict. I didn't ask to be. It happened. I come from a.
Do you remember how it happened?
13, 14 years old. I was released. I won't mention his name. I don't love him to this day, but I was released in hockey, and it hurt my feelings. I was
your ego,
sensitive.
Your pride.
Yep.
I was sensitive.
And I found booze at that point,
Yeah.
and I just never let up on it. It was I was having this conversation with Jody, who interviewed with me.
Yeah.
I said, I just hit my 6 years of sobriety. I'm 41 years old. I spent 21 years boozing and doing drugs.
Yeah.
And that's longer than halfway through my life. And I'm only at the 6-year mark of sobriety.
Yeah.
Broke my brain.
And that's Jody Anderson, who you've interviewed before, right?
I haven't interviewed him yet. I will interview him.
Good.
He's partners of Alternative Highs.
He's a great interview, too.
Yeah, he is.
That's actually one of the first things we did. We interviewed for Chatham Kent when we were talking about.
Yeah.
I can't remember what we
Connecting the dots.
Connecting the dots. Yeah,
Yep.
for Chatham CK. Yeah.
That's right. That's what put this into motion.
Yeah.
I knew that I was going to do a podcast. I just knew that who the hell's going to listen to me with zero credibility? Who's going to listen to that guy who's 3 months of soberness and going to talk about trauma and
Well, you minimize what you've done, and you did it all by God's grace. So I'm going to put that out there. But by God's grace, you've overcome addiction, you've overcome being paralyzed, you know, and not like you've overcome it and everything's roses and sunshine now. You've overcome it, and there's daily pain, and there's daily effort, and there's probably meds, and there's different things that, you know, I don't know how much you get into on the show, but I know you go through a lot of physical pain to be able to exist as a biped.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that's got to be why you're working out. It would keep me training.
Yeah.
It's, in a very small way, it keeds me training just because everything seizes up when I quit.
Oh yeah,
You know?
that's my fear, is the seize, because it happens really quickly.
Yeah.
And we're not getting any younger.
So it's not like you don't have clout with anybody who spends the time to talk to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, about what you've done and where you've been, right? So
It's just nice to share.
yeah.
Danny, you are such a great guy. Doing this for me means a lot to me because, you know, like I just said, this is happening because you paved the way here. Like, you showed me, hey, we're in a small town, but we can still make moves that we don't necessarily think can happen. And it was as easy as this to just sit down in front of my cell phone with some lights around us, have a great conversation, and it means a lot to me that you trusted me to come and join me here. So, Dan,
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dustin. I
I
appreciate it,
appreciate
man.
you.
No, I appreciate you. It's been a long time coming, and it's funny because this is a step in my journey.
Yeah.
And I had to get to a point where I could just throw the truth out there about everything I feel about this, like if it's God, if it's, because there's going to be people that disagree with things that we've said,
100%.
And that's part of the deal, right?
This is
It's no longer about them.
this is life.
Yeah.
I've had to get that skin a little thicker over the years, and you put up with what you got to put up with.
Yeah, well, we're forged in fire, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.